So welcome. My name is Marrton Dormish. I'm a minister at the Refuge in nearby Broomfield, Colorado, and a fourth generation Coloradan whose great grandfather immigrated from Germany to the Boulder Valley in 1892. I've been part of the group Right Relationship Boulder for several years, and it's a special honor for me to serve as moderator for today's webinar entitled Arapaho and Boulder Dialogue. Thank you to everyone in attendance. Thank you to all our panelists for joining us virtually this afternoon. And thank you to Sandra Larson and to Nancy Lipsey and the Boulder Jewish Community Center for hosting and managing the technological aspect of this webinar. Boulder JCC provides programs and services based in Jewish values and traditions, where people of all ages and backgrounds gather to connect, exchange ideas, learn, and grow together. This recorded webinar is sponsored and organized by Right Relationship Boulder, a local advocacy organization that confronts the racism and oppression that are part of our society's past and present, and seeks to facilitate learning, dialogue, and understanding between Native and non-Native people, organizations, and local governments. Our dialogue this afternoon is centered around questions that have been submitted to Arapaho tribal leaders and Boulder officials prior to this panel. Our hope is that today's interactions and exchange of ideas will further understanding between the panelists and those they represent and lead to tangible next steps for all who love the Boulder Valley. Right Relationship Boulder is particularly committed to seeking right, just, and equitable relationship between the Arapaho people who were forcibly displaced from their Boulder homeland by the Pikes Peak Gold Rush and the Sand Creek Massacre, and those who make their home in the Boulder Valley today. How can we cultivate right relationship in this context? How do we raise our consciousness of past injustices while remaining committed to justice in the present? That is the spirit of the questions to which our panelists will respond this afternoon. To maximize our time for panelist dialogue, we will not be taking questions from those of you in the audience. So please do not type questions for the panelists in the chat. For the purposes of this webinar, please introduce yourself and where you're tuning in from, but otherwise only use the chat feature only if you're having technical issues that you need help with. So just your name and where you're logging in from. I'm very eager to introduce our panelists, but first please join me in watching a short video of the 2018 Indigenous Peoples Day celebration.
Looking forward to what's Indigenous Peoples Day going to look like? What do we want it to look like, and how do we make sure it's not just a day, that we are building a foundation for a relationship going forward? We started with the interfaith service, and after that we had the lunch that was served by Tokabe, and I think that was a wonderful icebreaker, everybody eating and together and in the same room. And then we had the grand entry with all of the tribal folks and the dignitaries. And then we had these wonderful, wonderful educational speeches.
We must create a new future together, something which is long overdue. Well, no one knows where this path will lead. We are committed to this journey with you.
This is resolution number 1190, and it is a resolution declaring the second Monday of each year to be Indigenous Peoples Day.
Despite the broken treaties and promises and the acts of genocide and exploitation and discrimination that have come before your people and that you have experienced, you still come to us and extend a hand of friendship and kindness.
And if you don't know the answers, you wait for your friends to say, hey, Brian, this is what we need, this is what we want, and you're patient.
It's just so amazing to learn what Boulder is doing in establishing Indigenous Peoples Day.
I do want to assure you that the Boulder Valley School District is committed to ensuring that we tell an accurate story about the traditions, the culture, the current issues that are faced by the Arapaho, and the history.
From here, I want to move to our Arapaho guest speakers. So, Mr. Seahair.
Because here in this area, where our ancestors left their moccasin prints on the earth, it's like a stamp.
We have Heta Hinanaina. It means we were here since the beginning of time.
So today marks a historic day for us. It's something I'm so proud to be a part of, because now we are home. And we will continue to come back home time and time again.
I'm very grateful on this day that is being recognized by the Boulder County and all the people of this valley to make those changes necessary to recognize Indigenous Day.
You people in Boulder, you're setting that standard. Okay, I'm going to go home and tell everybody. I'm going to tell all those politicians that are coming to us wanting our vote. You need to follow the lead of these Colorado people.
Land that is being proposed to be set aside for the Arapaho people when they travel from the north to the south, or when from the south to the north.
So I just thank you guys for having that understanding and wanting to get to know us. I think that it's going to help you guys so you can continue to educate your future, your children, as to who we are.
That was, of course, followed by the exhibition dancing, which, of course, is always fun, and you've got everybody dancing. They get so excited when they talk about the hand games. So when we were talking to them, well, what kind of a setup do we need for the hand games? Do we need chairs? The language, I didn't go in where Teresa, HisChase, was doing the language program, but I understand she had so many people in there, and it was sort of hard to break up for the next thing because they were all into it.
So we're going to say, Nana Hawa Nisitja. Nisitja. Nana Hawa Nisitja.
The youth gave the gifts to the Arapaho elders, and that was just a lovely gesture to tie the generations together, and also the Native youth from Boulder with the Native people from Northern and Southern Arapaho.
So the American Indian Youth Leadership Institute has been in Boulder for over 18 years.
The Q&A we did at the end was kind of based off of the success of a Q&A we did in June. To me, that's really where defenses melted away.
My point of view is I will be thankful and I will be grateful for whatever the land is given to the Arapahos for this function.
I'm blown away by two things: the generosity of the Arapaho people and the generosity of our volunteers. We probably had 50 people with little name tags on them. So, pretty amazing.
So with the spirit of that first celebration together, fresh in our minds and hearts, I now have the privilege of introducing our panelists, some of whom you will recognize from the video we just watched. Panelists, please wave your hand when I call your name. From Oklahoma, our Southern Arapaho speakers are Chief Elvin Kenrick, Billie Sutton of the Southern Arapaho Legislative Council, and Kendricks Sleeper, Speaker of the 8th Legislature of the Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribes of Oklahoma. From Wyoming, our Northern Arapaho speakers are Stephen Fasthorse, Northern Arapaho Business Council.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you. Teresa HisChase, Educator and Business Manager for the Arapaho School District. And Marlin Spoonhunter, President of Wind River Tribal College. From Boulder, our local officials are Sam Weaver, Mayor of the City of Boulder, Dan Burke, Director of the City of Boulder Open Space and Mountain Parks Department, Elise Jones, Boulder County Commissioner, and Robbyn Fernandez, Area Superintendent of the Boulder Valley School District. Thanks to you all for taking time to be here today. Now I'd like to offer a brief word on our format. Each Boulder official will have 4 minutes to answer the following questions, which Nancy will paste into the chat so everyone can see those. What have you done since the 2018 Indigenous Peoples Day event to follow through on the intentions you or your predecessor expressed there? How are your intentions shown in your budget and work plans? What do you plan to accomplish this year and report to us next October? How can the community be involved? And what questions do you have for the Arapaho leaders present today? After each Boulder speaker, our Arapaho panelists will have time to respond with questions and ideas. This will be an open exchange, and just for everyone's information, when the allotted time is about to expire, I will hold up a yellow card so our panelists know there's 30 seconds left. And then I will hold up a red card when their time is up. And just to be clear, those are not to disrespect anyone, but instead to keep our 2-hour webinar on schedule. Our first speakers are Mayor Sam Weaver and Open Space and Mountain Parks Director Dan Burke, sharing together. Mayor Weaver and Director Burke, you have 4 minutes each. Please begin your remarks.
Very good. Thank you, Martin. On behalf of the City of Boulder, I'd like to warmly welcome everyone visiting from points far and near to this great event. I'm sorry we're not gathering in person at Boulder High School as we have in the past. And one of the great losses to the city and this group due to COVID was the cancellation of the planned March 2020 tribal consultation between Boulder and 13 federally recognized American Indian tribal nations with local connections. We hope to be able to hold that one way or another next year. We are in the process of rescheduling this and are reaching out to the tribal nations to seek their input on how and when they would like to conduct consultations amid the pandemic. As it pertains to consultation, the city respects tribal sovereignty and self-determination and follows federal and state consultation guidelines and guidance for conducting and participating in consultations. Some other highlights of our work over the past 4 years include, in 2016, we passed the Indigenous Peoples Day resolution to acknowledge the following. Indigenous people in Boulder have, as in all parts of Americas, endured centuries of cruelty, exploitation, and genocide. The Boulder area encompasses ancestral homelands of Indigenous peoples nations. Facing and acknowledging our past, good as well as bad, makes our community stronger and more resilient. Those now living on these ancestral lands recognize that harm was done and acknowledge that we have a shared responsibility to forge a path forward to address the past and continuing harm to the Indigenous people and the land. And as you heard in the video, we declared the second Monday of October to be Indigenous Peoples Day, which we will celebrate tomorrow. The next question is looking ahead. What plans do you have for the next 1 to 2 years? We want to continue to provide grants and coordination for Indigenous Peoples Day events in support of Section 2 and 3 of the resolution itself, and to continue to discuss and work with other local governments and agencies on how best to support the local Indigenous community. Continuing consultations with tribal nations, even if they must be held virtually. Initiating the long-term management plan for the city's Fort Chambers property. And in general, we believe that continuing conversations like we are doing this weekend with tribal representatives and local Indigenous community members, along with groups such as Right Relationship Boulder, are key to achieving success with specific actions and specific projects. And then how would we like to have the community engaged in supporting this work? The City of Boulder thanks the community members who are taking an active role in this work. As we mentioned, our work will be guided by continuing conversations with tribal representatives, existing and updated memorandums of understanding, the Indigenous Peoples Day resolution, and the Open Space and Mountain Parks Master Plan, which was recently adopted. We believe it is critical for community members to continue their important work in supporting Native American communities and ensuring that we follow through on our planned work. Thank you for including me and the City of Boulder organization in this discussion. I'd like to turn now to Dan Burke, head of our Open Space and Mountain Parks Department, to deliver the rest of our opening remarks.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, thank you for the invitation to participate on this panel. I'm very honored and very pleased to be participating. So just building off of Mayor Weaver's comments, to provide a little bit more detail on our consultation work with 13 recognized Native American tribes. There's two main points of this consultation that we're hoping to draw to some conclusions within the following months. And that is, we already have received preliminary input from tribal nations to rename the City of Boulder Settlers Park as required by the Indigenous Peoples Day resolution. And the city does not anticipate moving forward on a new name until tribal representatives and their governments have had the opportunity to provide us with their final recommendation. Over the past year, after the March 2019 consultation, the city and tribal representatives continued to have numerous working group meetings in between the consultations to receive input, not only on the renaming of Settlers Park, but updating several city and tribal nation agreements that were developed and adopted in the early 2000s. And we are looking to amend those agreements and hopefully to come to some conclusions on those amendments at the next formal consultation that is held. In addition to consultation and Indigenous Peoples Day work, there's also been several other activities that the city has been involved in. Sam briefly mentioned that recently the Open Space and Mountain Parks adopted their first master plan, in which several high priority strategies were identified. And one of those strategies that was in our master plan was to continue to support citywide engagement and relations with federally recognized American Indian tribes and Indigenous peoples in our community. So we hope to continue to make good on this now master plan strategy. We also just recently executed a revised data sharing agreement with History Colorado, and with the goal of that is to provide tribal representatives easier access to city cultural resources information that may be of interest to tribes. Next, we invited Northern and Southern Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes to participate in the development of a long-term management plan for the city's recently acquired Fort Chambers property. Historical records suggest that Boulder residents trained at a fort on or near this property in preparation for participating in the Sand Creek Massacre. We anticipate this to be a 2-year management plan development, and look forward to tribal participation in that effort. We also recently have initiated and begun discussions with other local governments and agencies on how to better engage with local Indigenous peoples. And this was in direct response to a request that we heard from tribal representatives at the 2019 consultation in order for us to find ways to better connect with local Indigenous community members. We've also approved permits for collection of sage on city open space by an American Indian ceremonial practitioners over the last couple of years. And the city has also retained the services in 2019 and again in 2020 of Ernest House, the former Colorado Commission of Indian Affairs Director, in order to help better advise the city staff on consultation and other tribal relation matters. In terms of what maybe got delayed and what obstacles got into our way, well, the easy answer to that really is coronavirus. The coronavirus response literally hit a week prior to the planned consultation that we had planned and in place in March of this year. And the pandemic has led to significant impacts to both the City of Boulder and to Native American communities. And it caused the postponement of this year's consultation. At this year, we are seeking to be respectful of tribal representatives' time and attention during this challenging time. However, we are interested in resuming a consultation, whether it be in person or virtual. Because of the postponement of this year's consultation, we have not been able to conclude talks on the two main subject matters.
And I'm going to have to cut you off there. That's actually, your time's up.
All right.
So if you could save the rest of your remarks for the discussion later on, that would be great.
All right, sounds good, Martin.
Thank you. What we'll do now is we'll have 10 minutes for our Arapaho panelists to respond to or otherwise engage with what Mayor Weaver and Director Burke have shared. So over to you all.
Hello, this is Councilman Fasthorse. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. I can hear you just fine, thanks.
Okay. First and foremost, I want to thank you guys for giving us your updates, especially on the Settlers Park. I think that one's a very big one for all the tribes that are being consulted on the renaming of that park. And the 4 chambers, we're very interested in seeing the ideas and what could be, explored as that comes along. I appreciate the fact that there has been some resolution to help our tribal members and of all nations to be able to pick sage. That's a very, very big deal to us. So really appreciate you guys recognizing that on behalf of all the tribes, because again, we all rely on that natural sage, and there's only particular areas that it grows, and just really thankful that you guys recognize that. And again, looking forward to trying to figure how we come together on the consultations. Of course, a lot of the tribes are getting very familiar with learning how to use the Zoom. So I believe that's probably our next best step. Probably have to double check with a few of the tribes to make sure they have connectivity in their areas, and double check before we actually confirm everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, just one brief follow-up. So we are I believe in the coming couple of weeks, we are planning to send out some official notices about getting your input on a virtual format over the winter for consultation.
I had a question, if it's okay. Just want to thank you too for the input or all the updates. And I was just wondering more specifically, the line items that in your budget, about the intentions shown in your budget and work plans. I know you went over some, but I was like specifically what kind of line items in your budget do you have related to that?
Yes,
So
thank you.
oh, go ahead, Dan.
No,
I was just going to say, much of it is personnel support at this point, because the open space folks who are working on this get paid, and so we have line items not specific to this project, but to support the work that's being done out of the Open Space and Mountain Parks Department. And then another area where we've expended previously, we couldn't do it this year, was in the tribal consultations. You know, we put the money to house people and to make sure that we had proper accommodations and everything when they came in to visit in 2019. So those are two areas where we actually expend funds on this. Dan, do you want to add something?
Yeah, so there's about 20 city staff members that support either tribal relations or local indigenous communications out of several different departments, and including our city manager spends time with us working on these issues as well. In terms of other specific budget line items, we have expended about $50,000 over the last 4 years to support the Indigenous Peoples Day through supporting the weekend of celebrations and the small grants that the city provides in order to support activities throughout the 3 days. Sam already mentioned that we have spent about $65,000 in the 2019 consultation. We had $75,000 set aside for the 2020 consultation, which we will carry forward to support consultation in 2020. And the City of Open Space Mountain Parks Department has $100,000 that we have earmarked and set aside to support our upcoming long-term management planning process for the Fort Chambers property, which we again are estimating to be about a 2-year planning process, which will involve stakeholders. And of course, we're very much looking forward to participation from tribal members.
The staff personnel that you're talking about, that you have budgeted in your line items, how many of those are native?
I would say the only one that I'm confirmed on is the hiring of Ernest House as our city's consultant. So we hired Ernest in 2019, and for the past 2 years, he's been consulting with our staff. We felt that that was a gap, and that was something that was missing. And so in order to sort of fill that gap, we have hired on through consulting services, the services of Ernest House, who we meet with regularly, and he participates in meetings whenever we are discussing city tribal relations, and he does participate in consultation meetings and the working group meetings that was held with tribal representatives. And he's also been part of recently when staff has gotten together with county staff, the city staff has gotten together with county staff and other local municipalities in Boulder County. Ernest has been helping us as an advisor on those as well.
That's pretty good. That's all I had. Just wondering about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And just a quick interjection here. We have about 3.5 minutes left. So any other thoughts or comments?
Hello, Haba, Dos, Chief Elvin, and Billie Sutton here. I'd like to say thank you on behalf of our family and our tribal members from Oklahoma, as well as our brothers and sisters up there in Wyoming, to the City of Boulder and to our surrounding communities and surrounding counties. Say thank you for being mindful of us. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak with you. And thank you again for allowing us to be a part of this webinar. I'd like to also acknowledge a person here with me. Her name's Professor Brandy Dennison of University of North Florida. She is very interested. She's from Boulder area, specifically went to high school there, I believe. And so I'd like to just acknowledge that she's here with us to be a part of this. So I'd like to ask one question before I make another comment is, how many other Indigenous or Native Indian people are on this panel other than Arapaho?
You mean the consultation panel?
Right here, yes.
There are 13 federally recognized tribes that are part of that consultation. Is that right, Dan? Yeah, and so again, that's why that consultation is so important to us. I really have enjoyed the chance to get to know better some of the tribal members who have attended, particularly in 2019. So each one of those tribes has representatives who come to the consultation.
Appreciate it, Sam. It's nice to see you again. I'm glad to see you again.
Yeah,
Hey,
me too.
so I want to make sure that we understand, or from my perspective, from the past few years, that we have been talking about issues that when we were contacted by Right Relationship Boulder, and appreciate their work, to come to Oklahoma, and also went to north to the Wyoming Arapahos to come and bring us to Colorado for bringing home the Arapaho ideal. And based upon this resolution, it's become more clear that Indigenous is from the 13 that you're speaking about. But I attended the MOUs with Boulder a couple years back, and they had roughly 26 other than the Arapahos being represented there. And so I don't want to confuse the two issues. The Arapahos were asked to come. That was one issue. The MOUs, Memorandum of Understandings, was another issue that was brought to the table in the past three and a half years. Recently, the last 1.5 for the MOUs. And so when I asked that question is because when we went out to Fort Chambers, Dan and I had sat across from each other with Paula, and we talked about Fort Chambers and what it meant for the Arapahos to come home, and for the specific thought that Chief Nawat, left hand, was there, Southern Arapaho Chief, and that's where the Fort Chambers really began to bring an awareness to the community from an aspect that we recognize that it has links to the Sand Creek Massacre. And I don't want to leave out any of our Cheyenne allies, but that's kind of where I was talking about from that aspect, from my perspective, is trying to make sure we keep these two items and issues kind of separate, because they are, in my mind, when you ask the Arapahos to come home versus asking all the other 26 or 13 or 12, or however many it is, to come back for Indigenous. And I'm not trying to stamp out any of the other tribes. I'm just saying we talked about these ideas and these things, and we wanted to make sure that the people in the community of Boulder, not only the community, but the school districts that we met with, and also Longmont County and other Lafayette, Broomfield. We've done other things to help with bringing the Arapaho home. So I just wanted to kind of reset and just make sure that we're talking about Indigenous things, but then there's another side note that we've been really contacted by the people of Boulder as they stuck their hand out for the fellowship, and we extended our hands. So I just wanted to kind of bring that discussion a little bit more tighter for the Arapahos. I hope.
I appreciate that. That was very helpful to hear. And I believe that we've worked on the renaming of Settlers Park in the context of the larger group. And I'm not sure how the planning will go for Fort Chambers, but I'm sure the focus will be very heavily on Arapaho history because of the terrible things that came from there.
That's right, Sam. And Chief Kenrick, it's nice seeing you and talking to you once again, which we've had the opportunity over the last year or so to talk several times. So the Fort Chambers planning process will be as just the northern, the tribal representatives will be from the North and Southern Arapaho as well as Cheyenne. It will not be the full 13. It's going to be that smaller group for that particular planning effort.
Also, I wanted to, again, glad to see you, Dan. I also wanted to touch on the the ideal that Sam had just brought up, and I'm trying to recapture what he just said about Settlers Park. And in that MOU, when we met with the Boulder people there, remember the MOU was a meeting after the Arapahos met with you all there at the Museum of Boulder. There's where the settler parks came up, and there's where the ideal that winter camp, where Chief Left Hand camped during the winter. Winter camp come from the Arapahos when we met there. When we went to the meeting, to the MOU, all the other 26 tribes did not like that because it was focusing on, I'm gonna say it bluntly, focusing on the Arapahos having that there with you, as we had given you that, the name, a potential name. It was just a potential name. We didn't set it in stone, and I don't think the Boulder community had set in stone, but I just wanted to make sure we understood that the winter park came from the Arapaho vision, and that we wanted to identify it with words at the bottom about where left hand camp during the winter. So I just want to make sure that that I'm trying to give you the understanding of what and how it transpired from winter camp and how it got into the MOU discussion. And now you open it up to 27 other tribes. It's never going to be settled for one name because everybody can't come to agreement on just one name. You know how many people it takes. So, Aho, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Elvin. I'm going to interrupt there, and we're going to move on to our next Boulder panelist, but I'm sure those issues will come up again about the winter camp and other topics that were raised. So thank you all for the questions and for the answers. So we'll now hear from our next Boulder official, Boulder County Commissioner Elise Jones. So Commissioner Jones, you have 4 minutes starting now.
Thank you so much. As was said, my name is Elise Jones, and I speak for all 3 Boulder County commissioners in representing Boulder County today. And I just want to start by saying I'm so honored to participate in this important dialogue with the leaders of the Arapaho Nation as part of Boulder's celebration of all of the Indigenous people in Boulder Valley. And also, as I've said before, we want to acknowledge our responsibility in the past and ongoing harm that your people have faced, and to express our continued commitment to cultivating a new relationship together. So to answer what we've been doing since the 2018 Indigenous Peoples Day celebration, a handful of things. One, we work to help support the statewide repeal of Columbus Day, which the state legislature passed in March. The Boulder County Parks and Open Space Department has continued to collaborate with a local Native American veterans group who, well, at least until COVID hit, was regularly holding sweat lodges on the land at South Down Indian Mountain Open Space. And working together, this project has really become a rich partnership that provides access to ceremony for many in need. And we're really grateful to be a part of supporting this powerful healing practice in Boulder County. And then 3, our Parks and Open Space Department is also collaborating with other open space agencies, including the cities of Boulder and Longmont, to advance a regional forum for consideration of land-based issues. And with the help of Colorado American Indian leadership, this group is actively exploring the intersection of regional open space management and relationships to both tribal governments and urban communities. And we are doing that work with Ernest House, as has been mentioned. And lastly, Parks and Open Space has also begun a project to integrate recognition of the American Indian experience and perspective into our Parks and Open Space organization. In addition to land recognition, our department is examining opportunities to incorporate the perspective of Native peoples in the language and the concepts that we use in our educational and cultural history programming and in our land management approach. With regards to how Boulder County is showing our intentions in our budget and our work plans, a few ways. One, we're exploring the creation of an Office of Racial Equity. Our team is putting together a proposal for the commissioners to consider on this later this fall. And part of that role of that office would be to continue work with the American Indian community. 2, Parks and Open Space. Our regional work and our support for the infrastructure at South Down is part of our regular department activities led by our resource planning division. And those costs and staff costs are included in our operating budget. And then we've secured 2 different grants to help pay for the Parks Land Acknowledgement Project. And Parks employees are dedicating some of their staff time to work on that project. And then finally, the county commissioners are looking at taking money from our budget to expand the scope of this work to provide additional consulting around that question of tribal government relationships to address issues that come up, such as the issue around the Civil War statue that's in front of the courthouse. And then what do we hope to accomplish in the next year that we can report on next October? 1, we hope to complete our consultation project resulting in recommendations for the Boulder County American Indian Relationship Development, completion of our Parks and Open Space Land Acknowledgement Project, completion of a framework for the Regional American Indian Advisory Group pending the recommendation of the current regional working group. And then we're going to make a decision about creation of a racial equity office in the next handful of months as well. And regarding how we'd like the community to be involved, we welcome the community as partners and co-creators. And we look forward to really continuing to build and strengthen relationships on the basis of recognition and repair and trust. And really, my question.
I'm going to jump in there, and your time is up.
Okay.
But you'll have a chance to respond to any comments that any of our Arapaho panelists might have in regard to what you've presented.
Great.
Who would like to go first?
That's Billie Sutton. I like the idea of the Office of Racial Injustice. I think that's important because I think a lot of racial discrimination comes from ignorance. We need to add, I've got an educational background. The more you educate people, the better the understanding is, especially when you have separate cultures. When you're more educated about each other's cultures, there's more of an acceptance. And we just need that so bad. And, we need it in our schools, we need it in our government, we need it everywhere, really. So many times we're just overlooked. There's not that many of us, so why pay any attention to us? I feel that's the attitude of a lot of the governments. It's like, okay, they don't have a large voting bloc, so let's not pay any attention to them. And also, I think a lot of it is also, well, we don't want to bring up what happened because, there's some shame there. They don't want to hear about that. But I think they need to hear about it. And they need to know that we are still here, and we live in this country just like they do. We have jobs, we pay taxes just like everybody else does. There's a lot of misconceptions about us. People think we're giving free money. I said, well, send it my way then. How come I'm not on that list? So we are members of all the communities. We pay taxes. We do the best that we can at our jobs. And we try to educate the people that are around us, but it needs to be on a wider scope for sure. Governments need to understand us, and they need to pay attention to us, and they need to listen to us. No, we don't have high numbers. We're not a big voting bloc, but we're still important. And the education needs to be in our schools, in our governments, people we work with, wherever we are, we need to educate people. And I think we need to educate the people of Boulder, Colorado, more about who we are. I wouldn't mind at all. I'm going to retire here in about a year and 2 months. I'm counting down, but I wouldn't mind at all going to schools and talking with them and bringing people and showing them just what our lives are like. So that's all I had to say.
Well, I think that was particularly well said, and let me say, it's good to see you again. And if you are retiring and offering to come and help educate here in Boulder County, we'd be happy to take you up on that. But I think you're so right about, like I said, our racial equity team is putting together a proposal that they're going to bring to the Boulder County commissioners sometime this fall to look at an office of racial equity and the importance of that to really shine a spotlight. Yes, Boulder County is serious about working on equity and doing outreach and engagement to people of color across the spectrum, but certainly the American Indian people. And having an office that's designated helps shine a spotlight on our intention and our commitment. It puts our dollars where our words are, and really elevates that within county government, so that we can't lose track of that really important body of work and that ongoing education and engagement, which can easily get lost in the, as we deal with the crises of the day and other things. And so I too am going to be, I'm term limited as a county commissioner, so I only have 3 months in service before I have to pass the baton on to the next commissioner. And there will be 2 of us. Deb Gardner is also termed out, but we're pretty confident that the people that follow us as commissioners will carry the same level of commitment and emphasis in working with tribal leaders on this really important work.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. We have about 5 minutes left.
Well, I know we don't like long pauses, so makes people kind of weird out. I will tell you, just to kind of break the mood and say, hey, we got a Arapaho virtual resume just thrown right on out there, didn't we?
Anyway.
So, so along with our discussions in the past with Boulder and other communities, what the Arapaho want to do also, and I suspect all the other tribes want to do this, is we want to bring our culture to you all in that relationship of transferring students, or we want to bring teachers up there and teach some of these classes, or have some of their kids come down to Oklahoma or up to Wyoming to interact with our students, where they're in public realms or whether they are on reservation or whether they're on Indian or in Indian schools. And so we talked about having that dialogue back and forth, and we talked to Boulder Valley School District, and they allowed us, and I appreciate that, they allowed us to go into their school a couple of years back to share with their middle school, one of their little bitty middle school, one of their middle schools there in Boulder. And we were wanting to do that again, but of course, COVID comes, and then now we got to rethink about how to make that happen. So, but there is a need for us to come up there, and for you all to be able to come down and recruit. It's kind of a recruiting thing. The University of Colorado, they have a hall up there called Cheyenne Arapaho Hall, and they want the Arapaho kids and the Cheyenne kids to come up and go to school. They want us to come back home and go to school at the university. So we're trying to entertain those thoughts and trying to get our people motivated in Oklahoma to think outside of our small community there in Oklahoma. And I think this may be a good avenue to get the people up there that have the experiences from Oklahoma or from Wyoming. I hope.
Thanks, Chief Kendrick, for that vision. And I think that aligns well with the kind of things that we would like to do in partnership with the Arapaho tribes and school district. So it's great to hear you indicate your ongoing interest in doing that, because I think we share that.
I would like to, I know y'all keep on down to maybe 3 out of 5 of those questions. But like the last one, what questions do you have for the Arapaho leaders present today? Did y'all have questions for us?
Well, I did, but I talked too long, and so I didn't have time. One of the perhaps most important ones is, how do you all envision your tribes reconnecting to the land in Boulder County? And I think Chief Kendrick started talking a little bit about the cultural and educational exchange, but the actual connection to the land, it would be helpful to hear what would be meaningful to you all in that regard.
Well, I know myself, when y'all invited us last year, me and my kids, we came up there and we got to participate and take part in the Indigenous Peoples Day celebration. And we're really happy to be up there and thankful, you know, like y'all said, welcoming us back home. It felt good. And yeah, I just wish we could maybe travel more up there, maybe even the way y'all were talking about that Fort Chambers, or the place where we maybe could camp on our way up north. Yeah, just to spend time around there would be good, you know. Yeah, like even if what you're talking about, Billie taking up the offer of going up there and helping out around up there, teaching about our people, or others from up north. You know what I mean? That's why I was asking that question. How many line items, you know, are you budgeting your personnel, your staff, to invite somebody? Maybe they might want to move over there and, you know what I mean, be present and help educate and be there where we're from, you know, where our people are from. But yeah, still, I don't try to say too much. Want to apologize to our chief, Elvin Kenrick. I have you know, talking in front of my elders and our chiefs is hard for me. So just trying to be respectful and real thankful to be here. I hope.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Speaker Sleeper, and thank you, Commissioner Jones. We're going to move on to our next Boulder panelist at this point. We'll now hear from BVSD Area Superintendent Robbyn Fernandez. Superintendent Fernandez, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here with you this afternoon. So I feel proud that I am able to report some exciting developments in Boulder Valley School District progress. And I would like to begin by saying that nearly a year ago today, it was actually October 8th, 2019, that our school board, by unanimous vote, adopted the resolution in support of Indigenous Peoples Day. And I would like to read just the last couple of sentences from that resolution because they outline the district's commitments. It says that the Boulder Valley School District will encourage and support activities in our schools that recognize, celebrate, and educate the community about Indigenous peoples' culture, tradition, and our shared history in these traditional lands known as the Boulder Valley. That the Boulder Valley School District will work in partnership with Indigenous peoples to implement curricula that accurately address the traditions, culture, current issues, and history of Indigenous peoples. And so those were some very exciting and public commitments that were made, and we began work forward in that sense. First, to answer the question in terms of both policy and budget priorities, just before that time, at the beginning of last year, we did expand our Equity and Family Partnerships Department by threefold, from 1 to 3 people, to help make sure that we are doing our best to be responsive to implementing the curricula that addresses traditions, culture, current issues, and history of Indigenous peoples as part of their responsibilities. The other commitment that we made at that time is to make sure that we would review our curriculum, what it is that we're teaching our students every day, as part of our strategic plan to prioritize certain state standards that are inclusive of diverse people, including Native peoples. And so in February, we held a very, very well attended community forum that included community members and staff members who are Native American and as well as other diverse community members, staff members, and students from our district. And they provided feedback about how it is that they would like themselves, their histories, their communities, and their identities both recognized in our curricula, in our curriculum materials, and in our instruction, but also ways in which that we can make sure that we are accurately communicating that information and in a way that is respectful and honoring. And so that occurred in February. Unfortunately, as many people have referenced, that was immediately prior to the arrival of COVID. However, nevertheless, we have made substantial progress in this vein with our standards prioritization, and we are nearly done with that process, I'm happy to say. In addition, just in recent weeks.
Oh, Superintendent Fernandez, I'm sorry to interrupt. Your time expired. So we'll still have, that's okay. It's hard. I know a lot of people are probably reading from, their notes and can't see my sign. So that makes it particularly hard. So, but I'm sure your comments will elicit some responses and questions from our Arapaho panelists. I know already we've had education has come up a number of times, the teaching exchange, the topic of Fort Chambers has been a very common topic so far. And we have not yet heard from President Spoonhunter or from Ms. HisChase. And so if they have anything to share, we'd love to hear your voices as well.
Well, hello, everybody. Glad to hear the dialogue. I'm glad to hear the updates. One thing that I was wondering earlier was, what do you guys vision as part of the master plan for the Fort Chambers site? Because when we were down there as Chief Elvin Kendricks was explaining, we had a lot of good ideas of what we wanted that place to be like and how it would benefit our people. And I was just wondering what you guys envision for that place and how actively involved are our people in the consultation meetings for designating that land as to be used for part of our, so that we can make use of it in our own way, like we wanted to have it as a place where we could meet up when we travel from Wyoming to Oklahoma, or when we travel to and from Colorado. We also envisioned it being an cultural educational place for our own people and for people of Colorado. And so there was just a lot of good ideas, but I was just wondering what you guys were thinking in terms of the master plan, if anything has been like that has been brought up yet, because I think it would only be fair and only right that we have part in that place, because that's where we always were. And as far as the consulting with other tribes, I really have a hard time understanding that. And I know that other tribes have been through Colorado, but as Arapaho people, then we have always claimed Colorado as our homeland, our ancestral homelands. And in our stories, if you learn our stories, our oral history and our oral stories, we have, or if you've read any of the books that are pertaining to Arapaho, then you will understand and know that we have names for all of those places down there already. So for the renaming of Settlers Park, I think we probably already have a name for that area, So those are just my thoughts. I don't really have any questions except for what I was wondering about what the people down there are visioning for the master plan of Fort Chambers site.
Thank you, Ms. HisChase. Robbyn, I know that was your turn to address, and you're welcome to speak to the master plan question, but any others of the Boulder officials present are welcome to jump in as well.
Okay, sure. I am happy to, and I am tracking a couple of the questions that have been addressed specifically to me in the chat. And so we're excited about a couple of things. One, that we have just started an entire curriculum review. It's almost an audit, if you will, to look for the representation of all marginalized voices and marginalized groups in our curricular materials, in our instructional practices, and in the curricula itself. And this is being conducted by an outside group in collaboration with our staff. And to answer one person's question, yes, we do have an Indigenous education representative to help us with that. In addition, we have, of the 41 members of the new BVSD Equity Council, we had nearly 900 applications for membership in this newly formed council. And we have multiple representatives on this 41-person council who are Native American. And they are both students and adults. And so the overarching purpose of this council is to help us understand, in terms of curriculum, but in terms also of daily practice, that we become more equitable. You know, that's the bottom line. And so both in terms of curriculum, but in terms of daily practice of how we welcome or don't welcome students and families well in our schools, how we are accurate or not accurate in terms of historical portrayal, or in terms of inclusion of all voices in our materials and in our practices. And we're excited about that because we have needed that, and our students need it, our community needs it, and our family needs that. So that's great progress.
I was part of it's called the Social Studies Standards Review Committee, and we rewrote the standards, and they are cross-curricular across the other areas of study, but we incorporated our culture and history and a lot of things about the Arapaho and that. And I think I sent Paula the link, so it's probably available to you guys if you just maybe ask Paula if she hasn't shared it already, but that would probably help you out quite a bit. And it's K through 12 standards.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Yes, Paula, I would really, truly welcome that information. So if you would be able to share it with us, we would appreciate it.
Hey, Martin.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to just try to bring a thought forward, okay? Kind of to, I believe what Teresa was trying to bring out also was about Fort Chambers.
That's great. Just to know, you have about 1 minute left for this segment, and then there will be time for further discussion. So,
okay, really quick. Education is prior to 1851, Cheyenne and Arapahoes, two different tribes. The government made a mistake and brought Cheyennes and Arapahoes to Oklahoma and put us together. Two different tribes. Don't make the same mistake with Fort Chambers, even though the commonality is Sand Creek. I understand that, but don't confuse the two from that side of the white man's perspective. Two different tribes, just like they are in Oklahoma. And I'm not trying to be mean to our Arapaho allies and our family members, because our Cheyenne allies are Cheyenne family members, because we have been put together and our marriages have intertwined. But two different tribes, just remember that. I hope.
Thank you, Chief Elvin. That's very helpful clarification. So at this point, we've finished the first phase of our panel discussion. So thank you for the reports that Boulder officials gave, and thank you, Arapaho panelists, for your questions and feedback. Each Arapaho panelist will now have 4 minutes to share with us what's most important to him or her in building relationships with the people of the Boulder Valley. We'll alternate between Northern and Southern Arapaho representatives. Panelists, please share your visions, hopes, concerns, priorities, and or any specifics or ideas or suggestions you'd like to make, or bringing up other topics that have already been discussed. So first, we will hear from Mr. Stephen Fasthorse of the Northern Arapaho Business Council. Mr. Fasthorse, your 4 minutes begin now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the time. And of course, I know our time is limited. One of the biggest pieces that I feel that we could really work on together is similar to what we're trying to do with the city of Longmont, is the Sister Cities program. I think that would be something that could tie into what Chief Alger was talking about, to where we could collaborate on bringing that exposure to diversity more upfront and really help establish that community with each other. It sounds like there's a very excellent group of community members who really want to engage and be effective in these challenges of trying to correct the history. And so the best way to do that is through our children, you know, by teaching them correctly, showing them what it is that they were misinformed, or better yet, inform them correctly before they are misinformed. So education is key to bridging that gap and changing that mentality. So, you know, I'm all for that. You know, I think Teresa's got a good idea with the curriculum that could be helpful for all of us. I think we're boundless when we think outside the box to come together and look at how we together can form what is needed, you know, to write the history and correct misconceptions, stereotypes, and to be able to instill good values. Because again, that's something we live by. You know, that's why you see the engagement you see now, is because, again, we were always taught by our elders to help, you know, and always be ready and willing to help. And so that's the spirit of our ancestors. And so that's pretty much where we are at this moment, you know, and again, we need help too, you know, because our children suffer the same, you know, not having the values of knowing exactly where they come from and being able to really see that history and understand that it's going to be told correctly. That empowers them, it supports them, it encourages them. So that's where I'm at. Thank you all. I hope.
Thank you, Mr. Fasthorse. We will now hear from my friend, Chief Elvin Kenrick of the Southern Arapaho. Chief Elvin, you now have 4 minutes to share. You're muted.
Yeah.
There you go.
As I want to make sure I could get off of mute. Gosh, I just want to say thank you to the Boulder people and to our brothers and sisters on Northern Arapaho people to be with us on this time to try to reflect on how to bring about what the people of Boulder really want and have asked us to do. I'm here to try to help promote, here try to help assist not only the Arapaho people in what they are trying to achieve, but also to try to help the non-Indian, the communities up there in Boulder to achieve what they have stated and what they want. And because of the resolution and because of the Right Relationship Boulder group and other groups of churches up there, just so many people has asked us to come home. And so that's why I am very honored to be a part of this, is because we talk about these things, and I talk about terms of virtual versus physical locations. We are virtual. The Arapaho are virtual because we're not up there with you all. Y'all have names, you have places that have Arapaho names. You honor Chief Nawa and other people up there of the tribe, but we're not there physically. We're just there virtually. And when you guys asked us to come up, it gave us the opportunity to become physical with you, to be among you, to have our things, our culture, to be there with you, so that you can recognize there was a people there before you, and that the people there before you, even they were relocated, not because they wanted to leave, but they were forced to leave, and then attacked, and then forced to be divided and go different locations. So we are happy, I am happy to try to have this opportunity to be a present, a physical present there, where we have the cultural center, where we'll have things that pertain to Arapahos specific, because that's why I was asked to come up there. And I appreciate that. And I can't do this by myself. I need the help of the Arapahos, and I need the help of the non-Indians there in your location, in your communities. And that starts with your government, down to your school systems, all the way down to the men and women in all walks of life that are service workers or in the military, or teachers, or just, custodians, whoever they are. I'm just here to try to make it physical for us. And I think that's what we're hearing from the other Arapaho people on the panelists, is they want to be physical there. And you guys will allow us to be. You guys will carve out us a place. You guys will give us the opportunity to be physical. We haven't seen it yet, but we are hopefully working towards it. And so that's what it means to me, is to be a part of this, is to make this virtual thing a reality and a physical thing for us, because that's what you guys wanted us. You asked us to come, and we came, and we want to be a part of your lives, and we want to be an educational portion of your lives. So in the education world, hey, Indigenous people will be the heading, but you're going to have Arapaho culture. You're going to have Ute culture. You're going to have other cultures, other tribes that particularly may be there, at least 13 of them in your curriculum in the school. So I hope we can help with that educational portion from the Arapaho side. I hope.
Thank you, Chief Elvin. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Teresa HisChase. And just a reminder, she's a Northern Arapaho educator and business manager for the Arapaho School District. Ms. HisChase, you have 4 minutes.
Make sure that I'm unmuted. I have Wayne C here with me too. He's in the background over there. Wave your hand, Wayne. But and my husband's here with me, Robert. You guys all know Robert. He stepped out, but I am just glad to be part of this. Also, I'm really thankful that we could come together for times like this, and I wish there was more of it. When we go down to Colorado, then can you let him in, Wayne? Yeah. When we go down to Colorado, then for us, when we tell people we're going home, and when we're down there, then we tell people that we're in our homelands, that it's just really a spiritual thing for us because we have a spiritual connection to that whole area, and it really feels good for us to be back down there to Colorado. And I just want to promote more educational activities for the children, because we always say children are our future, and I wish that we could do more things like student exchanges like the Sister Cities program has in what Stephen was mentioning. And we had a good idea with to build those relationships with our youth with it down at the YMCA, but then COVID ruined all of that this year, so we weren't able to make that happen. But we would like to take our children back there and educate them about ourselves, you know, because before Western expansion, then we had a really good way of living, and we had everything intact, you know, as far as our own educational system. We had our own teachers, we had our own sophisticated form of government. We had a collective life movement, and it all ties to our home down there in Colorado. And we had our different age graded societies that we lived by. The women had the Women's Buffalo Lodge and Quill Work Society, and we did everything down there in Colorado. And if we could only teach the children of Colorado as well as our own children about these wonderful things about us, then that would be a really great thing, you know, for them to grow up and know these things. And one time we had last year we had a language symposium down in Denver, and Paula brought a group of children over, and they made a really good presentation, and it just made me cry because those little ones really knew quite a bit about us from studying on their own, and they had really good teachers that taught them, you know, they gave them a good understanding of what happened to us, and they talked about the Sand Creek Massacre and things like that. But if only we could have more interactions like that, then I think that would be really great, because I just want everybody to know and understand and realize that we're still here. You know, we might look different than we did 150 years ago, but we still have our language, we still have our culture, we still have our own ways of worship and doing things. And it's just that we live in two worlds now. So that's the main thing that I would like to develop for us, is just cultural education, you know, for our people and for the children of Boulder, you know. And I wish to work closely with Boulder Valley School District and Right Relationship Boulder and other people who contact us for help. You know, it's just really good to have these connections. So thank you guys, and don't be afraid to reach out to any of us. You know, we're full of information and always glad to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. HisChase. Next, we'll hear from Billie Sutton of the Southern Arapaho Legislative Council, who was a late addition to our panel today. So Councilmember Sutton, your time begins now.
Teresa, we missed that. We lost connection.
I just really want to stress education. And it would be great because I can go north and
meet with our northern people. They still have a lot of first language speakers. They've got a lot of stories, everything. We're not that fortunate at home, but there's very few of us, between 2,000 and 3,000, I forget how much. But they're so strong with the language, over 10,000, I think, something like that. I would like, let's fix up Fort Chambers or someplace, I don't care, someplace where North and South can come together, you know, for maybe that week, and then let us go out to these schools and start teaching maybe a day at each school or something like that. You know, we can start off like that, but we need a place to stay. You know, we can get there, we need someplace to stay. And like I said, I love it when we can our Northern family and just talk. Because we don't see each other that often except for ceremony, and then everybody's so busy. we travel every year from Oklahoma to Wyoming, and we go straight through Colorado. We used to stay at Fort Collins. We go drive as long as we could, as long as I could, to Fort Collins, spend the night, and then move on. So it would be great to have a place, to just rest up before we go on, but also to meet maybe for Indigenous Peoples Week, and then, go to these schools. So that's an idea. I just want to be in Colorado. I want to learn the lay of the land. I want to hear our stories from our elders up north about the land, because they're closer for sure, and they've got more of the history. I think that's something we need to look at. I hope.
Thank you, Councilmember Sutton. You were breaking up there a little bit, but then your connection resolved, so I'm not sure what the issue was there. But thank you for what you shared. Next, we'll hear from Marlin Spoonhunter. He's the president of Wind River Tribal College. President Spoonhunter, please begin your remarks now.
Inisa se husa da testo dos in awa. Ini deputy not na yete hiha. Yete beha basnetana no nana 18. No nana 18 batana. Had ni deputy no tayana ni seha. Had ni seat and had ni out no nana hinati. So I just said, hello, my name is Western Thunder Eagle. I'm a Northern Arapaho. I work here at the Wind River Tribal College, referred to as a higher education home. I work with the language and try to help students and teachers in our tribe. And our language is sacred. And so are all the areas that, where we resided at one time in our history. I'm more interested in the focus of education. And there was a lot of good ideas that were brought up, from the different people that spoke up about education. And I worked 18 years up on the Blackfeet Reservation, and we created, culture clubs in the elementary, high school, and middle school. And what we used to do, we used to go across the whole state of Montana and do cultural exchanges, with different, actually the big cities, and our students. I attended an NIA workshop one time, and there's a presenter from New Mexico State University, and I asked him, I said, I want to form this club. I said, give me some ideas of what I should do. And he said, most clubs that we know always focus on Indian dancing and singing. He said, but when you go out, he said, you need to do more than that. He said, you need to present your history through storytelling. You need to do plays. And he said, you need to do poetry. He said, you make it more educational for those people. And our main goal at the time was, having to deal with racial stereotypes. And, even though there were 7 reservations up in Montana, there were still students from these big towns and cities in Montana that used to think we didn't drive cars, we still rode horses, we lived in teepees. And I got asked by a high school student, he said, do you guys still live in teepees? I said, yeah. I said, during our ceremonies. I said, when we have our powwows. I said, yeah. I said, but other than that, I said, we live at home just like you guys. And so these cultural exchanges, they open the eyes of those that don't really understand who we are as, or a Thofnitana, and it's a good thing, to do. And our part first, before that all occurs, is we got to teach our students our history, and we got to teach them about, places in Colorado. And then in the end, they can actually go down and, see, oh, this is what we're talking about when we're talking about this particular, cliff or mountain. And so we need to, teach our kids so they can go teach others. And it's just kind of all of how we learn about education. We've been focusing a lot on the language here at the Tribal College, and we received a grant from First Nations in Long Mountain. Teresa wrote that grant, but she wrote a grant for the last 3 years for our language camps. And last year we started a Master Apprentice program. And then this year we ended up getting a grant again, so we'll be doing that. And so we really appreciate, the assistance and help that, the area where you guys all live, for the support and understanding that, our language and our history and our way of life is important. So this is kind of what I have to say. And if you have any questions.
Thank you, President Spoonhunter. Thank you for speaking to us in Arapaho. Last but certainly not least, we'll hear from Kendricks Sleeper, Speaker of the 8th Legislature of the Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribes of Oklahoma. Speaker Sleeper, you have 4 minutes to share.
Okay, thank you. Hello again, everybody. And I just wanted to say I'm in agreement with all of it, everything that everybody's been saying, talking about. I'm excited about the future. I'm thankful for all the resolutions that y'all submitted on our behalf, everybody, all the people. I'm thankful for the dialogue. I'm thankful for the relationships that we're building. Again, I'm just excited about the future, what the future holds for us because of all the dialogue, all the resolutions y'all wrote, everything that's going to come about from all of this. So I'm excited to see what the future has in store for us. And I think we're setting a good example for our children, for the whole world, if they would pay attention to, what we're doing, the way y'all's recognizing our people, all Indigenous people. It could go a long way. And I was just thinking maybe the same way that y'all reached out to us, and well, really, Billie kind of included me when I became a legislator, and I'm thankful for Billie, reaching out and inviting me too, and our Chief Elvin Kenrick. Just to be included feels good, to be a part of this and know what y'all's talking about. And, but the way that y'all did that for us, maybe we could include it in our budget or something along that line, or raise money and invite y'all to where we live so y'all can see where we live and how we are, and maybe participate in what y'all created for us to be a part of in Boulder. Maybe sometime when the virus is over, we could work on something like that. Maybe, invite y'all to where we live to get to know us and where we're at. So, yeah, and before this is over, I know time goes by fast, and I know Teresa brought up the master plan. I would still like to hear what y'all's vision of what that's going to be. I still would like to hear that, but that's all I want to say. I don't say too much. Just thank you. I hope.
Thank you, Speaker Sleeper. With our remaining time, we have about 20, 25 minutes or so to have an open dialogue. So I'd like to invite all our panelists to talk about issues already raised, as well as practical, tangible next steps toward right relationship between the Arapaho people and the people of Boulder. And some of the things that have been coming up over and over that I've written down are Fort Chambers, the master plan. That definitely would be great if some of the Boulder officials could address that topic. Educational exchanges, teaching exchanges, and sister city programs and language exchanges, having a a cultural exchange center at Fort Chambers. Maybe there's a way to combine those. So there's a lot of ground to cover, and I'll just open up the floor to everyone. So who would like to start us off?
If I could suggest Dan to address the Fort Chambers questions, they've come up several times.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Mayor. So just a little bit of background for when Open Space and Mountain Park Department acquires a property, we use a very specific funding source called the Open Space Fund. And those monies can only be used to for the Open Space Department to acquire and maintain lands to help meet the open space, what we call the charter purposes. And those purposes are outlined in the city charter. And open space funds are only to be used for those specific purposes. So when we acquire a property, one of the things that we try to do within the first 3 to 4 years, and try not to get too much longer than that for a particular property, is to develop a long-range management plan. And that plan is to help guide the city department on what types of uses and what the primary purposes of that open space property shall be. So, and why that's important for us is that under the city charter, there's a number of different purposes that could meet the open space charter purpose. There's habitat and ecological protection. There's scenic, protecting the scenic character and quality of the land. There's agriculture. That's a very specific purpose within our charter to help for the open space charter. There's providing recreational opportunities, and there's floodplain protection. So all of those are part of our open space purposes. And the purpose of a long-range management plan is to help guide long-term, what is our primary purpose or purposes for holding this property and for maintaining and managing this property. And so that is what we're about to embark on, is to develop that long-range management plan. That plan that's going to sort of guide actions and guide our work over the foreseeable future. Typically, those plans are done pretty much in-house, and then after we get just with our staff, and after we get sort of done with our staff recommendation, we'll bring it to our board of trustees. So there's an open space board. And then we get comments and recommendations from our board, and then sometimes council will provide their feedback and recommendation and approval as well. In this particular case, because we realize of the direct tie to the Sand Creek massacre, is we wanted to get upfront input from the tribes and other community stakeholders at the same time that staff starts to think about these long-term plans. So we're doing things a little bit differently, in which we're going to solicit feedback, solicit thoughts, brainstorm with our stakeholders what this long-range plan would look. And so staff will get together and do those and have those talks over the next 2 years. The property is actually, because it's right outside the city limits, it's a fairly large property. It's about 110, 115 acres. And it includes lands that have very unique and rich soils for this area. So it's one of only a few sites on the open space lands that could have the potential for local food production because of the soil type. It also has, on some portions of the property, a lot of great ecological habitat. And there's actually 2 buildings on the property already. One of it was built, residents built in the late 1800s, which has high historical significance. And so there's interest in community members about the history and architecture of that house. And of course, then there's the Sand Creek tie-in and everything that goes with that, and how we should tell that story, how we should remember that. There's a plaque out there right now which does not do a good job in doing that. So how could the city better engage in that issue? And so this is where we do need the help. And this is where our city manager has already sent out formal invitations to the tribe, to the tribes to see if we can get representation on, to engage with staff, to have these conversations and to envision the possibilities and the long-range management that staff could then come forward and provide a recommendation to our Board of Trustees. Again, we're envisioning about a 2-year process beginning. We were supposed to be beginning right now, and obviously that's delayed. So we're thinking of starting in late Q1, early Q2, Q2 of next year, and again, about a 2-year process. So we are not trying to, as a staff, to oversee that conversation or to come up with predetermined ideas and solutions. We want to be open to what we're hearing and to develop a plan in cooperation and collaboration. So I hope that provides some context and shed some light on our next steps.
And I'll just say one more thing to that, and it's more a question to you, Dan, just to confirm. That property is near the Valmont Butte site as well, correct?
Yes, I would say it's about a half mile to the north.
Half mile to the north. My understanding is that the Valmont Butte site was an important site to the Arapaho. So the chamber site is close to another site that would be, I think, of interest. So that's another tie-in that I think about when I think about the chamber site.
Thank you, Dan and Sam. Do we have any questions to kind of get more details or follow up on the Fort Chambers Master Plan question, or?
Thank you for all that information. That really clarifies a lot of things for me. Back in the early 2000s, I was part of the process of, I guess, saving Valmont Butte. I took a lot of elders down there, and we worked with the city and NARF to get that land protected, because that was a significant place for us as we used that place for fasting and prayer.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, go ahead.
That, he said something about singing and dancing, but one of my thoughts for letting our people go back home was I see a lot of other like NFL teams highlighting their Indigenous people from the area, and it would be good to see our people be able to perform at Broncos games, Nuggets halftime games, Colorado Buffs, places like that. That was one thing I forgot to mention, but I think that would be so awesome, because we have a lot of dancers and singers in our tribe, and I know that they would be more than happy to go down there and, you know, share with the people.
Thank you, Teresa. Any other thoughts on the Fort Chambers area specifically, or the conversation can go into other areas as well?
This is Councilman Fasthorse. I like the fact that you highlighted the cultivating aspect and the soils that are in that area and the ecology. I think those are very important aspects that we could implement going forward together. It'd be nice to really turn that into an area of education to what the native vegetables and plant life was like, and that we relied on in those areas. The sage, the willows, you know, everything that is there, the chokecherries, you know, different things like that. So,
Councilman Fasthorse, we can hear your music in the background. I think it's yours, and it sounds like really cool music, but it's a little hard to understand.
Sorry, I was playing my greatest hits.
Nice. Okay, that's better.
But yes,
Go ahead.
I would really like to see how that could be developed to be, again, a natural, ecology center there too, and show what historical plants that we use to survive on. So, I like that idea and appreciate you expressing of the fertility of the land there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Along those same lines, in Florida right now, and we went to visit this, what's it called, Pigeon Key? Did a tour there and went through the museum, all of that stuff. And in the back of my mind, I was waiting for her to say, okay, talk about the indigenous people. And it never happened. And that happens a lot wherever you go. There's history, there's museum, and they're real proud of it. And that's okay to be proud of your history. But you're not expressing all the history there when you leave out the indigenous people. And that's what happens in the United States. Indigenous people's history is left out. And I would just love to see it everywhere in Colorado. Love to see it in Oklahoma for that matter, but it hasn't happened yet. But that's something that we're always put on the back burner, even in museums and history. Never there, not a word is spoken about, and that needs to change.
I'd also like to echo the same kind of thoughts that Billie is saying is, when you bring up the ideal that open space has fertile grounds and plants and farmlands or whatever you want to call it there, that it is able to grow these things. But the fact is, open space is restricted, period. No building, no museum, nothing in terms of photographs. If you want to look at pictures, paintings, symbols, nothing. And I've had deep discussions with Dan, and I appreciate the discussions with Dan. I really do. I know where the restrictions are, and the city of Boulder would not have those restrictions. So to take the city of Boulder, buy that space or chambers from open space, and then go into the relationships that the city of Boulder wants to have with the Arapaho people, specifically in this area, then we can have not only with our plants and our herbs and those things could be planted there. Educational center could be there, or a cultural center that has educational background, educational portions, reflective area, biking area, monuments. We take it out of open space, we can do these things. As long as it's in open space, because of the restrictions, and I understand why the people in Boulder, in the communities, pay their money, additional money, to have the pristine visual effect of being able to walk those areas untouched. I get that. We're talking about, what does the city of Boulder and its community want? They want to have this relationship with the Arapahoes, specific at this point, at this site. That's the direction I think it needs to go. And I appreciate Dan. I just know the restrictions. I hope.
So we have about 5 minutes left for our open dialogue here, and I just want to encourage everyone for the rest of our time to try and focus maybe on some tangible next steps that we can all agree to. at least in the next, whatever time frame, and go from there. So I'll throw that out to the group.
I like the idea of coming together in Zoom meetings. I think we can probably should figure out a way to include everybody that needs to be included and continue these discussions. And thank you, Councilman Fasthorse, for bringing up the fact about the agricultural component to the open space area, and Dan Burke for mentioning that. As the Arapaho people, wherever we lived, we always grew corn, and we always knew where to harvest wild potatoes, wild onions, wild turnips, wild carrots, things like that. We knew, like I said before, we had our own botanists and our own scientists within our tribe, and we had all this knowledge, and so we knew how to identify all these different kinds of plants. We knew what to use for different medicinal purposes, and we had cures for everything, and we were disease-free. We never had any diseases or illnesses, and if we did, then we knew how to cure them right away. And choke cherries played a significant role in our lives because of the uses, and because now they did studies and they're known to cure cancer. So it's really important for our people and all people to understand that we had this kind of knowledge, and I think that it would be really important to include it in the master plan. If there are any barriers, I hope we can overcome them so that this can be possible, because food sovereignty is something that we're really focusing on now, trying to combat diabetes and obesity and different ailments that we experience in this day and age. But we're trying to go back to our traditional roots and live by those ways. And so if we could bring that knowledge back and share it, I think that would be so awesome. That's all I had to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. HisChase. Any final thoughts? We have a couple minutes left.
I guess I'll just speak up and say one of the ideas that I found most intriguing is the idea of sister cities within the country, because that's accessible to a lot more people than international sister cities. And the principle of sister cities is it's all about person-to-person contact. And so I think there's a lot to that. That's one of my big takeaways from this conversation is, I heard over and over again that people wanted to have more physical contact. And so I'm going to take that and think about that. I thought that was a great addition.
Well, let me piggyback on that. I heard a lot of comments about cultural and educational exchange, and again, the same theme of person-to-person interaction, relationship building. Obviously, we're in the time of COVID where that's not going to be helpful or possible right now, except for through Zoom for a while. But to do that, and to do that at different age levels, like the school district is already a partner in doing that. But at all, at school age and older adults and everybody in between, to have that opportunity for ongoing sharing, I think would be really welcomed and would go a long way towards helping the people of Boulder Valley understand the full true history of these lands and the indigenous peoples that were here first, and then create a relationship that goes forward into the future. So we have a little bit of grant funding to start thinking about that, but it feels like that's a particularly ripe idea as well.
I agree, and I'm glad, Mayor Weaver, that you brought that Sister Cities piece up, because I think that is a very fruitful possibility for moving forward. The other thing too that before we begin our closing, that I thought I would just propose is the possibility of a follow-up gathering Ms. HisChase had said the Zoom is a good option. It's really the only option we have right now of being together. And would it be possible to set up another panel like this for 6 months from now as a kind of a way station or a checkpoint? So I could leave that to Paula Palmer, who has helped organize today to make that happen. But I got one thumbs up. What does everyone else think about that idea? Okay. Okay, great. We will plan on working something out, and I'm sure you'll be hearing from Paula about that. Okay, you couldn't hear me. Now can you hear me? Okay, my mistake. See, I did it. It was my turn to do it. So on behalf of Right Relationship Boulder, thank you to the Boulder officials who joined us today. Thank you as well to the Arapaho panelists who joined us. And while we can't present gifts in person this year, I've been asked to show our Arapaho speakers the framed photos that will soon be sent to both Northern and Southern tribal offices. These photos are gifts from the City of Boulder and Boulder County open space departments. So here is the first picture. And then here is the second picture. So some important Boulder area landmarks on those photos. We're now honored to close our webinar today with a short prayer by Northern Arapaho poet Darrah Jolene Perez, who gave us permission to show the following video.
Grandfather, bless me with unity. Under one's own wanting, now banding together in search of peace to create a better place in one's own heart, yesterday, today, and all the tomorrows. Grandfather, show me the way, the path to spiritual living. Give me the answers through visions, through dreams, through my art. Make me understand and help me be all that I am destined to become. You are the way, Grandfather. You are the light that I need in order to fulfill my destiny in life. It is because of you I am strong. Because of you I am smart. Because of you I am creative in knowing what it is I want and need. You give me the desire to go after what it is life offers me, taking it by the reins and leading it to that spot in my heart where I can nurture it and it will grow. I am a proud native of the Wind River Mountains, the home of two great tribes, both the Shoshone and Arapaho. Grandfather, protect the people of this area. On this land, in this world, my prayers are strong and I know you can hear me. Grandfather, I want to remember the time when my ancestors walked about this land and had their homes within teepees, where the troubles remained upon survival and strength. I want to remember the ways of the women folk and the ways of the men folk. I want to cherish my culture, my heritage, and my name. Grandfather, you are wise and old, and you hold all the great stories of the times. You hold all the memories. It is you who knows us best and looks after us and picks us up when we tend to fall. You protect us from the evils of this world, and for that I thank you, Grandfather. I honor you, for if we didn't have you here with us, we would get lost in our ways, in our tradition, and in our teachings. Grandfather, you guide each and every one of us to better days through the memory of our ancestors, through our elders, through our children, through our teachers and leaders, through our experiences and lessons taught by the ones we encounter each and every day. Grandfather, you give us hope for another day granted, another day spent, and another day gone. One day we will all join you, Grandfather. Our spirits will leave these bodies and be beside you to help guide our loved ones in better choice making, to the complete understanding of spiritual living. We will help offer the needed strength, ambition, and help to always honor the Native culture and the people through Creator's miraculous art. Ho ho, Grandfather.
Hey, oh, nebesi wa. Chibath nehen, no. Chibath ti no hinona eti. Oh no sa.
Thank you to Ms. Perez for allowing
Grandfather, bless.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you to Ms. Perez for allowing us to share her powerful and moving prayer. Thank you, panelists, for taking time to participate in this dialogue. Special thank you to Paula Palmer of Toward Right Relationship and her fellow organizers for putting together this panel today. And thank you to all who attended and listened in on this important conversation. Our tech facilitator, Nancy Lipsey, is now posting an evaluation link in the chat. So before you leave this Zoom call, please click on the link and take a few minutes to complete the short form there. Good night, and I wish you all a meaningful Indigenous Peoples Day tomorrow.
Thank you.
Say it now.
Hachinaha Bethana.
Hachinaha Bethana.
Hachinaha Bethan.
Oh, see y'all later.